Hi, and welcome to another edition of The Voice of Rio Grande. I'm Klein, the Dean of Community College Programming here at Rio Grande Community College in, where else, Rio Grande, Ohio. And today I'm particularly pleased to have with me Mr. Ian Blache as my guest. Ian Blache is the Director of Workforce Development and the Grants Coordinator for the college. Welcome to the show.
It is a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm very happy that you're here. You know, a lot of times many people do work for any number of public entities, and the work that they do benefits many people, but they rarely have a public forward-facing kind of persona. And I think grants might fall into that category.
It does.
Something that we all need, or something students certainly wish they had, something communities wish they have. And a lot of work goes into researching them, applying for them, and maintaining them. But that isn't necessarily always communicated to the public. So in these next few minutes, we will be exploring just those topics. So I have spared no expense to come up with a graphic that I think illustrates the basic concept of grants. And there it is. Ian, would you agree that that's accurate?
I am going to agree, and then I'm going to dispel that notion a little bit down the line, to a slight degree. But yes, money is definitely a big part of grants and what makes them attractive.
So, next slide. We have several different kinds of grants, and meaning where you might go looking for them. Could you talk us through this slide?
Absolutely. So there are different sources of grants where the money comes from. Sometimes they come from private and public foundations who are out to do charity work and philanthropy. Sometimes they come from corporations who are interested in having a social footprint. Sometimes they come from the state level, which is government trying to solve an issue of particular interest in its state. And sometimes it's a federal grant, which is a nationwide problem that the government is trying to encourage people to find ways to fix.
So does Rio Grande Community College have interests in all four of these categories?
Currently, at one time or another, it has had all four of those. Currently, it is a little bit of a mix of all four.
Okay. So one of the primary functions of a grant, at least at the community college level, certainly has to relate to workforce development?
Yes, indeed.
Okay. So that has a number of parts to it. I would imagine economic development is part of it.
Economic development is what I have described workforce development as being. I think workforce development is one of those terms that people hear and they almost kind of know what it is. They think they might know what it is. So I have often said that it is economic development, and the way that I go on from there is to say that it's basically an economic development strategy that focuses on people. So people is its focus. And I'll give you a few kind of reasons why that's true. Every region has a different mix of workforce, and some of those are emerging workforce, and those would be your students and people that are in some educational field taking courses. There is an existing workforce, it's known as the incumbent workforce, and then there's a dormant workforce, and often those are ones that are currently not employed but are looking to reintegrate themselves into employment.
Okay.
And it's important that to think about workforce development as in terms of opportunities and barriers. That what you want to do as a workforce development official is you want to bring opportunities to the region and you want to remove barriers. So if you have a company out there that is in need of workforce, what you're trying to do is find skilled workers and provide that company that workforce. You're also trying to connect the emerging workforce with opportunities for education and career development so that they can find their way into a job or a career.
Right, so we have a graphic here that might illustrate this. And anyway, nice and simple to read. So clearly
there's a lot to it.
It's focusing. There's a lot to it. Much of what you just mentioned is found somewhere in these words.
Yes, it's you know, there's a something called the Hawthorne Studies. which was in the late 20s and or early 30s. They did some research with a company in Hawthorne, Chicago. It's a suburb, with a company called Western Electric, and basically it was a company that made telephone parts. And what they wanted to find out was, it's a large plant that has a number of different people working there, and then what they wanted to find out was whether the effect of changes in lighting and other components of their work environment affected their productivity. So they did this long study, and long story short, what they figured out was that the lighting itself and the other things they were researching didn't have a great effect or great impact on their productivity. The control group stayed basically the same as the test group. But what was remarkable was that they discovered that just having those folks in focus groups, asking them questions about their work environment, asking for their input, watching them and sort of monitoring their work, caused an increase in productivity alone. Just that alone caused an increase in productivity. And the really exciting part of that was, basically what it said was, if there are ways that a company can interact with its workers that improves productivity, so it helps actually the company at the same time as it's helping the employee. So so I tie that back to this region by saying that most successful companies are ones that take the needs of its workers into consideration, and training needs and their personal development of their employees. Those that do that, those that put that as a priority, are typically some of our most successful companies.
All right. Let's take a look at the next graphic, please. So what we're describing here are how workforce development and grants intersect with each other.
That's right. That's right. Now, I would like to also point out that when economic developers look at a region, when companies look to relocate in a region, one thing that they're concerned with is, am I going to have the workforce that's going to fuel my company? Am I going to have enough people to work at my plant? So it's one of the first things, if a region does not have that workforce, then they're going to cross that right off the list.
I see.
So, so that's another reason that's very important. And I'm talking about opportunities and vehicles. I'll get to the grants piece now, is that when you talk about opportunities and barriers, you want to have a vehicle for it. Okay. And often a grant provides you that vehicle. Okay. So what a grant basically is, there's a lot of misconceptions about grant. You know, free money. That's the one that when I worked helping entrepreneurs, I had a number of
people don't come and visit us and knock on our door and say, we have money for this purpose?
You know, it happens more than you might think. It happens a lot, actually. And but one of the I'm glad to have this opportunity to dispel a couple of myths about grants. First of all, they're typically competitive. They're not easy to get. Usually you have to put together a pretty solid reason for why somebody wants to fund you doing something. And I really encourage people to think about grants in one way, that people that are funding, they want to solve a problem of some sort. There is a problem, there's a societal ill, there is something that they're trying to achieve. And so what they're doing is they're encouraging people to come up with innovative ways to address that problem and fix that problem and say, this is how I'm going to solve your problem. And so what's really important with grants is to decide what your shared purpose is, what your shared vision is. So you look at what this grant is trying to solve, and you see how it aligns with the problems that you yourself and your region are trying to solve. And if you can make them line up well and create an innovative strategic solution for how you're going to fix that, then there's a good chance you're going to be funded.
All right. And what is a typical time frame for a grant from the time you first become aware that maybe there is a potential match for the institution and a grant being awarded? Is it just a couple of months? Is it a couple of years? Depends.
That's an interesting question because it is all over the place, typically. If you're talking about maybe whether you have your radar out for a particular problem that you're trying to solve on your campus, maybe you're looking for that grant, you see something that could apply very well to it or partially apply to it, you apply for it. It could take, generally speaking, I'd say it takes 2 months from the time you apply for a grant till you find out whether you were awarded that grant. but the way they cross your doorstep is often different. A lot of times state agencies are sending out notifications of grants. Ohio is, in my experience, one of the top states in terms of its concerted effort to fund projects in its state.
Okay, so projects that have a point. So it would be, I'm guessing, fairly rare for someone to say, well, you know, I perceive a need. I'm not a corporation, I'm not a foundation, I'm not any branch of government at any level, but I would like money to work on this issue. Does that way of approaching it ever actually happen?
It can be.
Okay, but it's rare?
Yes, it's rare. It's rare because you really have to have the opportunity. The opportunity has to present itself. You can search a database for grants, however. You can go on grants.gov and search a federal database of grants. And if you do go on grants.gov, what will amaze you is the amount of things that are being funded, the amount of grants that they have for things so specific it would boggle your mind. And but typically, if you just have your radar up for grants that come out, you can kind of look and see, okay, how can I avail my institution of the benefits of that grant? So I would say it kind of works in the reverse. You kind of look for the grants, you know, or if you're in the business of setting policy and you want to encourage your state representatives to focus on an issue, there are ways that you can kind of drive an initiative or drive a priority as well. So.
All right. Right now we're going to take a short break, and we will be back with more Voice of Rio Grande in just a moment. Welcome back to the Voice of Rio Grande. I'm Craig Klein, Dean of Community College Programming here at Rio Grande Community College, and I'm joined today by Mr. Ian Blache, who is the Director of Workforce Development and our Grants Coordinator. I think it's time for a fable. How about The Cat and the Bell?
The Cat and the Bell. Okay. So there's this group, this is fable that's often attributed to Aesop, but it actually has not been documented that far back. But it's an interesting fable. It concerns a group of mice that live in a small mouse community. And they were being terrorized by this large cat. And this large cat has been attacking them and making their life miserable. And so they hold a community meeting and they say to themselves, what are we going to do about this cat? And one of those mice puts up his hand and says, I have a great idea of what we're going to do about this cat. We're going to put a bell around its neck. And that way, whenever we hear that bell, we know to scurry, we know to flee, get away from that cat. And then all the mice agree that that is a wonderful idea. And then another mouse tentatively raises that mouse's hand and says, we have a problem, and that problem is that I'm not sure I know how we're going to get the bell around the cat's neck. And the point of that fable is that good ideas are important, but often it's the execution of those ideas that is really important.
I'm glad that came back. We haven't totally gone off track.
We have not totally gone off track.
Okay. So it's in the execution as much as the design or the inspiration.
Absolutely, and I would say that workforce development is concerned with finding ways, strategies, innovations for getting that bell around that cat's neck, and so with grants.
So we're connecting a region, if not people, with opportunities.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Would the phrase value proposition be a part of this mix?
Value proposition, this is a word that I learned in my entrepreneurial days, serving entrepreneurs in Western Kentucky. It's useful because when you consider a grant, it's important to consider the partnerships that are involved. One of the grants that we are scheduled to talk about today is the Industry Workforce Alliance grant, and there's a list of partners that
take a look at this.
You might want to.
And it's quite a list. Look at all of this.
So these are all the
15, 16 items here.
That's right, and these encompass private industry, state government, academic institutions, hospitals, healthcare, private care, and education. And the point I'd like to make when it comes to value proposition is that it's extremely important as the author of a grant or someone who's developing a grant strategy. which is, by the way, the most important piece of the grant, is developing that strategy to consider your partners and what are they going to get out of it? What are they going to get out of it, and how are you going to create a solution or an outcome that the grant is after? That's part of the value proposition for the grant as a whole. So value proposition just basically means proposed value. This is what people are going to benefit. So these are the focus of the grant, as well as the partners that are helping you get there.
Something or some things will be enhanced if we were to receive this.
If you were, exactly.
If you were to receive it.
If you were to receive it.
All right. So let's talk about some of these grant accomplishments.
Okay.
And we have a graphic for this. In fact, I think we probably have a couple. So let's go through this quickly. Right.
So this was the Industry Workforce Alliance grant. It was one of the first grants that I worked on when I began my tenure at the University of Rio Grande Community College, and I stayed home from a week-long vacation to write it. But I am very proud of the outcome, because what it ended up doing, well, let me tell you about the purpose of the grant. We always want to think about what the grant is there for, what problem it's trying to solve. The purpose of the grant was to get unemployed workers back into the workforce, or incumbent workers farther along their career path. So they asked those who were applying for this grant to consider strategies for doing just that, while at the same time helping the businesses in your region. So we identified healthcare as the meatiest or juiciest sector when it comes to available jobs per year, and it's far and away in Ohio, healthcare is that sector. And so we developed a patient care pathway and a health information pathway, and we chose to have a dedicated center to house all of our partners and all of our programs.
Pathway, do you mean academic program of study?
So when I say pathway, I mean exactly, yeah, academic program of study. We created a medical coding pathway, medical coding certificate program. Actually, this is a good time to talk about career pathways, though, since you brought it up. That one of the things that workforce development, and this grant in particular, was really focused on, was creating an entry point for those folks that had not been in the workforce. So how are they going to get into a sector that they haven't been in before? So you take somebody who has not been in the healthcare field, how are you going to get them in? What's their entry point? So we identified STNA, for example, as one of those entry-level jobs. An entry-level job, medical coding was one that we saw a great need for in not only the region, but the state and the nation, and you can work those jobs remotely. So, so that seemed like a program that we wanted to develop. We partnered with...
Look at these numbers, too.
So these numbers, yeah, we ultimately educated 135 folks in medical coding, EMT, EKG, other allied health programs such as that, STNA. We partnered with Buckeye Hills on this grant. We partnered with Aspire, which was then ABLE. We served 65 of those students. Those are folks that are interested in completing their GED or an equivalent. So we ended up putting 20 people back to work in the course of the grant, and we continue to do so to this day. Couple of years.
So this affected 220 people.
Yes, yes, it did, and there are still people that are taking this program online as well, because we created an online component for this, and they continue to take the accreditation exam that we also administer, because we created a professional chapter as well for our region.
Good. And would this relate to Meigs County Community Health as well, or is that a separate one?
That is a separate one.
Okay.
But I want to say just to finish up about the Industry Workforce Alliance grant, is that is what gave us our presence in Jackson. It allowed us to test market our presence in Jackson, and now we currently occupy a 20,000 square foot building in Jackson that is our newest offsite location. The Community Health Improvement Plan was another grant that I wrote on behalf of the Meigs County Health Department to help them with their community health improvement plan or program in general, and facilitated several different sessions with them, because health, tying this back to workforce and tying this back to the benefit of grants, health is one of those barriers that communities just to thrive as a community, and also to matriculate people through education and into the workforce, and having healthy companies that don't have sick days and that sort of thing. It's very important. Meigs County had a lot of opportunity in this area. So we developed a plan. We chose a group of over 20 agencies comprised of over 50 people, came together regularly, and they decided on 5 priorities that they wanted to focus on. I believe there's a slide for that, 5 priorities. Substance abuse, maternal and child health, workforce development, which is also the social determinants of health, chronic illness, healthy behaviors, and as a subset of all of those priorities are several goals, and those goals were broken up further into different strategies and tactics for how are we going to make those things better, metrics and a lot of granular detail that I could get into that
Let me just
I
ask
find
this:
interesting.
how long has this program been running?
So we've been working on this for almost a year now.
Okay.
We actually have already finished our chip. Meigs County county commissioners. There's a slide. There's a picture of that. The county commissioners have endorsed it. So this is a
Everyone's smiling, so
everyone's smiling. So that's always means good things. So
okay.
so it is a countywide initiative at this point that's backed by the commissioners, and we are on to the next phase, which is to get the Meigs County Health Department accredited statewide.
All right.
So, which the CHIP was a part of.
So we have other grants, obviously, that we should probably toss in here because they all relate to the mission of a community college. And so I'm going to go down the list fairly quickly. Rapids 1 and 2.
So Rapids 1 and 2, basically that's an equipment grant. So what we did was we got a little bit smart with this grant, and $1 million was awarded to each of the Ohio Means Jobs regions of Ohio. And so we partnered with other schools in our region, and we decided we would take that $1 million and we would work together with it. And so we broke that up into 3 different categories: safety and environmental health, advanced manufacturing, and healthcare. And we acquired equipment, and I think there's also
we have a slide for this, don't we?
A slide for that. So
okay, so these are things that came as a result of this grant being awarded.
These came. So yes, we got
So we own a trailer with a wrap on it.
A trailer with a wrap on it, and inside that trailer are PLC trainers. Also, we have additive manufacturing equipment, which is the lay term for that would be a 3D printer, for which there are a number of different applications. We have a couple of 3D printers on that trailer. The idea behind the trailer, it's air conditioned. We can actually pull it right onto the lot.
I can see the logos. If I study it carefully, I see Shawnee State, Southern State, Rio Grande, and the 4th one?
Ohio University Southern.
Okay. And so this moves around the whole region then?
Yes, it actually has not been mobilized yet, but we are getting it street ready and will be moving about the region.
All right. Very quickly, let's see, an internship grant?
Yeah, the OMIC grant, which is Ohio Means Internships and Co-ops. This is a great opportunity for our local and regional employers who are interested in trying on one of our students in a discipline in their work environment, and we'll pay for half of the salary for a 400-hour internship while that student is employed there.
Oh my!
So we've done this in advanced manufacturing, healthcare, and several others.
All right.
It's a great opportunity.
And the last one I want to talk to you about, it sounds amazing. So someone who wishes to find out more about that would
contact me, which I don't know that we have my name slide. I'd be happy to say that my number, if you want to contact me, is 614-563-4287. I'd be delighted to talk to anybody about that opportunity. Or you can reach me at iblache, IBLACHE, at rio.edu.
Very good. So as we wrap this up today on our program, a number of grants are in process. They are all being actively pursued. Literally hundreds of people are benefiting from their touch in one way or another.
Absolutely.
From internships to job placement to
companies,
to workforce training, and on and on and on. All part of the way that Rio Grande Community College reaches out to our community and our region and beyond. I'm Craig Klein, the Dean of Community College Programming at Rio Grande, thanking you for joining us today. And I want to thank again my guest, Ian Blache.
Thanks, Craig.
Bye.
Pleasure to be here.